These are the drugs which prevent or treat nausea and vomiting. Is there anybody in the classroom who hasn't his or her life hasn't experienced nausea or vomiting in the entire life? So you all are familiar. There is nobody. So what is sickness? In the common language, it is called sickness, but actually it is the feeling of vomiting, nausea, and in the act of vomiting, it's vomiting the process. To tell you the truth, sir, this is the most interesting lecture I actually enjoy delivering, and the students also enjoy listening. Highly conceptual, and like diuretics and immunosuppressant drugs, sir, majority of the drugs which we are going to discuss are already familiar and known to you. Many of the drugs. But they are not new. Hello? Let's discuss. First of all, as usual, we'll revisit the concepts behind the pathophysiology of vomiting. How does it happen? Under what circumstances you feel nausea and vomiting? And what are the connections? What are the networks? Efferent and efferent pathways. If you are able to understand those pathways, it will be easier for you to just put the drugs on the proper targets to treat nausea and vomiting. And then classify and name commonly used antiemetic drugs according to their mechanism of action. As usual, I will just put one or two drugs in their particular class. So moving on, so don't ask for the drug formulary. There are many drugs behind those classes, but I have just mentioned only one or two prototype most commonly used drugs in the pharmacological class. And describe the clinical situations where specific antiemetic drugs are used. Okay. First of all, some definition. Yeah. Where were you, all of you? You're in party outside? Yeah. Right? Okay. Vomiting from the outset, it seems very ugly event, isn't it? But actually, in the human beings, it has been evolved as a protective place. Just like pain. If you don't experience pain, you won't become aware about what is happening in your body. Some injury, some inflammation, something bad is happening in your body, and pain is a warning signal to you to do something. There's something bad happens. Likewise, vomiting is a protective reflex which has been evolved in your body. Something bad has entered into your body, get rid of it. And the only mechanism since previously, millions of years ago, the only means by which anything which entered into your body was mainly through ingestion, eating or drinking, mainly. So the only reflex which has developed in human beings is getting rid of it through a process of vomiting. So it seems very simple process, but believe me, it is very, very complicated process. A protective reflex that serves to rid the stomach and intestine of toxic substances and prevent their further ingestion to go into the body. It is a forceful expulsion of contents of the stomach and often the proximal small intestine through mouth. Nausea is actually not the act of vomiting, but the feeling of vomiting that you may vomit out food. So it is nausea, sickness. And antiemetic drugs are the ones which are used to prevent or treat nausea and vomiting. Now, before the drugs, you need to understand the pathophysiology of vomiting. It's a complex process. You see, just conceptualize. Imagine when you are vomiting out. Before the vomiting, there's a feeling of nausea and your mouth starts to salivate. It gets wet. Why? Because soon there will be stomach contents, gastric contents which will come out. So there should be lubrication. Esophageal secretions, gastric secretions, and salivary secretions they increase. So that there is no any hindrance or friction to the gastric content. It should be easily vomited out. And then all of a sudden, it's not only secretions. Secretions are mainly under the influence of which nerve? Vagus nerve. So the motor component to the vagus, and then not only to the autonomic supply, but there is a forceful contraction of the back, forceful contraction of the intercostal muscles. Together, there is an increase in the intra-abdominal pressure, so the stomach is contracted forcefully, so every content is coming out. So it is not only the motor component to the autonomic nervous system, but the motor component to the skeletal muscle also. So highly coordinated events are happening somewhere in the brain, which are controlling the autonomic system as well as the somatic system. Clear? So first, it is a pre-ejection phase, gastric relaxation and retroperistalsis. Peristalsis, downward direction, retroperistalsis, upward direction. And then retching, it is a rhythmic action of respiratory muscles preceding vomiting and consisting of contraction of abdominal and intercostal muscles and diaphragm against a closed glottis. Everything is coordinated. And finally, ejection. Intense contraction of the abdominal muscles and relaxation of the upper esophageal etc. So there is almost complete evacuation of the stomach. Protective reflex. The body senses something bad has entered into your body. Something bad, it has to be taken out. It has to be taken out. So there should be almost complete evacuation of the stomach. Now, where does this coordination happen? In the brainstem. No, this is the thing where every year you have misconception. Chemoreceptor trigger zone is nothing. It is simply an efferent center which receives signals from the blood. There's alteration in the chemistry of the blood, and there are some bad things in the blood. So it stimulates CT, so it is the efferent. I am talking about the efferent center from where all those things which lead to the act of vomiting, where does this happen? Efferent center. It is the vomiting center in the medulla oblongata. CTZ, which you are referring to, chemoreceptor trigger zone, is an efferent center which provides input to the vomiting center from where the act of vomiting is initiated. So just focus for a while, a collection of neurons which gets input, sensory input from variety of stimuli leading to an act of vomiting. Vomiting, you may feel vomiting due to when some of you are traveling in a plane, traveling in a ship, you feel vomiting. There are some drugs, chemotherapy, which can cause vomiting. Is that vomiting caused by chemotherapy different from the vomiting due to travel sickness? Is it different? Yes. The act of vomiting. Different pathophysiology, but final act of vomiting is the same. If you see a bloody scene, or if you are having a painful stimulant, MI, abdominal pain, your stomach is full due to some irritant substances, you vomit out. Is it different from the travel or the chemotherapy induced vomiting? All vomiting, act of vomiting are same, no difference. So in that case, those diverse stimuli culminate into a single center which leads to act of vomiting. And vomiting happens, which is the same, which is the same. And that so that is the brainstem vomiting center specifically located in medulla oblongata. It is not outside area posterior. It is a different. It is not situated. Now that leads to vomiting. Now let's revisit some of the situations where vomiting may happen, and many of you might have experienced. Simply touch your pharynx. Hmm? Or have not now. Have you ever experienced while brushing or something? You just your pharynx, you start vomiting. What is known as medicine? Gag reflex. Okay, gag reflex. So touching the pharynx may cause vomiting. So there are some sensory stimuli present in the pharynx which may lead to vomiting. And that is carried by glossopharyngeal nerve. Which which cranial nerve? No. That leads to the stimulation of solitary tract nucleus, and then you ingested something bad, food poisoning, bacteria, toxins, some irritant material, you start moving down. Or even your distension, you have overeaten, your stomach is full, beyond capacity, you start to feel sickness, move down. So GIT through vagus, and both stimulate solitary tract nucleus, and you stimulate brainstem, vomiting center. Vomiting is same. Gas reflex, distension of abdomen, both lead to vomiting. Everything clear? Not only this, you inject chemotherapy, anti-cancer drugs, or any many other drugs, or even viral toxins, or bacterial toxins, several chemicals. When they get access to the blood, they get access to the blood. There is a center in the brain you rightly mentioned previously, which is CT, chemoreceptor. As the name indicates, it is a chemoreceptor. It senses the alteration in the chemistry of the blood while passing through the CT there. If there is alteration, there are something alien which the CT there reveals that they may be toxic, they may be harmful to the brain or the body. In turn, CTZ is stimulated, and CTZ, once again, as I mentioned, it is an efferent center, which sends the stimulus to vomiting center, and you feel vomiting. So CTZ is stimulated, which in turn causes the stimulation of vomiting center, and then the vomiting ensues. Yes? Did someone ask a question? No? Motion sickness. It has nothing to do with drugs, nothing to do with ingestion of some poisonous material or toxic material, nothing to do, but it is basically when your body is in disequilibrium. It is not sensing the position of the body where you are in the plane, in the ship. Some people, some of you in the classroom might experience motion sickness while in the plane or in the ship or even in the Disneyland merry-go-round, roller coaster. Have you ever experienced? Raise your hand who has experienced. Oh, so many. So in the merry-go-round or in the ship, what does happen? There's another pathway. There's another pathway of inducing vomiting while your body is in disequilibrium. The equilibrium of your body is basically the function of your perception about where you are standing in relation to space, where you are sitting in relation to space, where you are moving or traveling in relation to space, outside space. is sensed by 3D semicircular canals in the middle ear. You must have studied in special senses in year two. Semicircular canals were part of the inner ear. So vestibular system from where eighth cranial nerve arises. Eighth cranial nerve has two parts, vestibulocochlear. One part pertains to your equilibrium, vestibular part, and the cochlear part is your sense of hearing, vestibulocochlear nerve. So the fibers of vestibulocochlear nerve, eighth cranial nerve, they culminate first into the cerebellum, and then cerebellum once again efferent sends input to the brainstem vomiting center. So you see, this type of vomiting, which is known as motion sickness, has completely different mechanism. So from this thing, you are aware now that each type of vomiting cannot be treated in the same way. It has to be treated in a different manner because the pathophysiological mechanism is different from stomach to the pharynx to the blood-borne emetics like drugs, motion sickness, different. Now to add more complexity to the situation, some of you might remember no GIT factor, no motion sickness, no drug ingestion, pain, severe pain, isn't it? Because vomiting. And it's a common presentation in MI, in acute appendicitis, in intestinal obstruction patients see the experience pain followed by vomiting. Sensory stimulus. And then whenever you see something in the movies or actually in the real life, you see something bloody, an accident, blood oozing. I remember, I tell you my first experience when I was in third year. My first posting was in Australia, rotation. And when I went to the OT, the first thing I saw was cerebral section. Yeah? And then there were a lot of blood, baby, so many things there. Immediately I felt nauseous, and outside the OR, I vomited out. There was no any GI issue, no morning sickness, motion sickness, or anything. But the sight of something unpleasant. Many of you might have experienced after smelling something other, I mean, some foul smell. After smelling something foul, you will start vomiting or at least feel nauseous. Have you? So there's no connection here. What is that? Okay, let me give you some more complex thing. You experience something foul, unpleasant, bloody, and you vomit it out. Down the line, several weeks or several months or several years later, just the thought of that thing makes you nauseous, isn't it? So no connections here. What are those? And you start vomiting, something unpleasant. So later, down the line, several years later, the thought of that thing happened, that event happened, you start vomiting, or at least feel nauseous. Yes. Higher centers. Yes, higher centers. Those are fed into your memory. Those are fed into memory, and the replication of those events may trigger nausea and vomiting later on. So I have mentioned here sensory input, pain, smell, sight, and then higher centers, they are fed into your memory. And as those events are replicated, once again, you will start to feel nausea. Now, these connections are clear to you. Now, the second step, let's put receptors. Which receptors are involved? So different receptors are involved at different places, and you will treat the type of vomiting accordingly. The last efferent center over there are NK1 receptors. NK1 receptors are the receptors for neuropenin. They are known as neuropenin receptors. one receptor, and the endogenous ligand for those receptors is substance P. And from ferrets, solitary nucleus, we have, you see, there are multiple receptors. I have written the order in the order according to the number of receptors, distribution of receptors, preponderance of receptors. That means serotonin receptor subtype B are more than the dopamine receptors. Dopamine receptors are more than the muscarinic receptors, and muscarinic receptors are more than the histamine receptors. So these are the order of distribution of these receptors in the solitary tract nucleus. When these receptors are stimulated, they will in turn cause the stimulation of vomiting center. In the GI, serotonin receptors leading to stimulation of vomiting center. Any question up to that? And then CT chemoreceptor trigger zone. Once again, we have serotonin receptors, dopamine subtype 2 receptors, and muscarinic receptors. Mainly they are serotonin and dopamine receptors. And in the vestibular system, we have different. Which one? Histamine and muscarinic receptors, mainly histamine and muscarinic. Okay, they are almost equal, histamine and muscarinic receptor. And from here, they are poorly localized, but based on the drugs which are effective in suppressing their type of recall vomiting or vomiting associated with some sensory input, for example, benzodiazepines, cannabinoids, those drugs we will discuss. These pathways are not well localized, but many drugs are effective which can suppress that type of vomiting. We'll discuss later. Okay. Now, it is very easy for you if it is vomiting due to chemotherapy. What is the myth? Just block serotonin receptors or dopamine receptor. If the vomiting is due to motion sickness, just block histamine or muscarinic receptors. If the vomiting is due to over distension or something, I mean, poisoning, just simply block dopamine or serotonin receptors. So you need to first qualify which type of vomiting the patient is having and then block that receptor. Before that drugs, let's, revisit some basic concept about the chemotherapy. This is important because now with the advent of hundreds of anti-cancer drugs there, now more people are undergoing anti-cancer chemotherapy, and this phenomena has taken more attention. Chemotherapy induced nausea and vomiting, CIN. Nearly 70 to 80% of patients receiving chemotherapy experience nausea and vomiting. CINV not only affects quality of life, but also can lead to rejection of potentially curative chemotherapy. It is so cumbersome, troublesome, that even patient may refuse to take further chemotherapy regimen. So in order to curb that, you have to take some very good medicines against that vomiting. Additionally, uncontrolled CINV can produce dehydration, metabolic imbalances, and nutrient depletion. If the patient is continuously vomiting for several days after the drug, these disturbances may happen. Now, another term which is related to chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting is anticipatory nausea and vomiting. Now, as the name indicates, it is an anticipation. The persons who have undergone chemotherapy and they have experienced severe nausea and vomiting after a few cycles, 2 to 3 cycles, just the thought of, oh my God, tomorrow I am going to have again a cycle of chemotherapy. A thought. Even before going to hospital or even reaching the hospital, the atmosphere, the ward, the nurse, the smell of the hospital may induce vomiting even before the administration of the chemotherapy drugs. That is known as anticipatory vomiting. That is well characterized phenomena in chemotherapy induced vomiting. That is not related to stimulation of CTZ. Chemotherapy induced vomiting is mainly due to stimulation of CTZ. But this is not, there is no drug. Even before the drug, CTZ has not been stimulated. So something different, higher sensory, higher sensory. Okay. ANV is a common among cancer patients and is often due to previous experience of the development of CINV. About 30% of the patients report this anticipatory, learned, or psychological nausea by the fourth chemotherapy cycle. So it is a classical conditional. Do you remember some of you Pavlov's experiment?
Yes.
Pavlov was a Russian scientist, physiologist, who got Nobel Prize somewhere before that in World War II, between World War I and World War II, in 20s, I think. What was his experiment? Do you remember?
Yes.
Do you remember? So this anticipatory vomiting is basically a conditioned reflex. It's a conditioned reflex based on your experience. That as soon as I am going to be administered this drug, I will start vomiting. So in anticipation, you actually start vomiting. So I'm not going into detail. We have almost finished half an hour. You can read on your own. Based on the analogy of Pavlov's experiments, this anticipatory vomiting is a condition reflex developed in people who have undergone chemotherapy and who have developed chemotherapy-induced vomiting. Okay, let's move to drugs now. Enough of the background. Antiemetic, based on the receptors, they can be dopamine receptor antagonists like metoclopramide and domperidone. You have already known these drugs in neuroscience block and in other blocks also. 5-hydroxytryptamine receptor antagonist. The prototype is ondansetron. And you have antihistamines, we learned in POD block, dimenhydrigate, diphenhydramine, magnesium. And you have antimuscarinic like scopolamine. And you have corticosteroids, dexamethasone. I will tell you, we never discussed about corticosteroids, but they are in higher sector. And then cannabinoids. Cannabinoids means amiodarone, no? Marijuana. Cannabis. Okay. And then benzodiazepines, you studied in neurosciences block. Okay. And finally, the vomiting center receptor present substance P receptor antagonist, NK1 receptor antagonist, aprepitant. Although many of these drugs are familiar, since you know the pathway, just memorize that pathophysiology, and it will be easier for you to place the drug in the appropriate place and then get the anti-emetic effect accordingly. Okay, dopamine receptor antagonist, metoclopramide and domperidone, already known to you. They antagonize G2 receptors in CTZ and solitary tract nucleus. In both places, dopamine receptors are present. Metoclopramide at higher doses also blocks 5-hydroxytryptamine receptors. That means, based on this pure mechanism of action, metoclopramide is more effective. Is more efficacy compared to domperidone. Metoclopramide crosses blood-brain barrier, whereas domperidone does not. You know already, we discussed in neuroscience in the context of Parkinson's disease. Okay. Adverse effects, you know, extrapyramidal symptoms simply because they cross BBB, metoclopramide, and causes the antagonism of dopamine receptor in the substantia nigra of the basal ganglia. Okay, you remember the pathophysiology of Parkinson's disease? So this is not a Parkinson's disease, it is known as drug-induced Parkinsonism or simply extrapyramidal effects. So the clinical picture resembles temporarily to that of Parkinson's disease, but then it is reversible. It is reversible. You will feel tremors, you will feel dystonia, you will feel rigidity, but it is temporary. With the removal of the drug, those features will be gone. Simply the drug crosses BBB and attaches there in the dopamine receptors in the basal ganglia, causing extrapyramidal symptoms. Why? Simply, I told you. And then galactorrhea, gynecomastia, impotence, and menstrual disorders. Can you explain why? So prolactin inhibitory hormone released from the hypothalamus is simply dopamine. So that provides a brake on the dopamine secretion from the anterior pituitary with the antagonism of that beta prolactin inhibitory hormone by metoclopramide. There will be enormous secretion of prolactin which may cause the fever. So the patient will actually be having hyperprolactinemia. Hyperprolactinemia, and these are the clinical manifestations of hyperprolactinemia. You have studied in brain tumor in the okay, hyperprolactin secreting tumor. You will study more in endocrinology. But only with metoclopramide, not with domperidone, simply because metoclopramide crosses BBB and domperidone does not. But then, how domperidone is an antiemetic? Because the target is CTZ, we already covered in neurosciences, and you know already, because the CTZ is outside the BBB in the area of schema. Okay? Everything clear? Good. Clinical uses GI stasis because the five dopamine receptors and the serotonin receptors are present in the GIT. Migraine, chemotherapy induced nausea and vomiting because those receptors are present in the CTZ. There is one other off-label use of metoclopramide, not domperidone. Off-label, I explained to you earlier, is the use where the drug is widely used by the physicians, not for an approved use. There are approved use on the label. Label means which comes with the drug. No, not with the motion sickness are H1 and M1 receptors. No, that is not off label. It is basically when the women who give birth to a baby, newborn, and they do not have sufficient quantities of milk. Okay, to feed the newborn. It is not an approved use, but it is used, metoclopramide, to increase the secretion of milk because galactorrhea is one of the side effects, isn't it? Because of hyperprolactinemia. Metoclopramide is often used for that off-label use, which is not an approved. Okay, let's move to serotonin receptor subtype 3 antagonist. Ondane cetron, granisetron, and pelone are the three drugs in this class. There are others also, but I'm focusing on three. Inhibit vomiting due to chemotherapy, radiotherapy, anesthesia, and GI stasis. Blocks serotonin receptors in CTZ and GIT, as we discussed in the initial slide. The antiemetic effects of these drugs persist long after the drug has disappeared in the circulation because of the continuing interaction with the receptors. The drug is not in the circulation, but it is bound with the receptors. Palonosetron is superior to others because of its higher receptor binding affinity and much longer half-life. So only once a day, all drugs can be given orally. Adverse effects are very few. Headache and prolonged QT interval, which is clinically insignificant. So basically, they are safe. Clinical uses chemotherapy and radiation-induced vomiting, post-operative vomiting. So pretty much understandable and conceivable. Do you need any further explanation? Because we discussed the receptors. So accordingly, you can figure out the serotonin syndrome. They will cause serotonin syndrome. Yes. Why? They are serotonin subtype 3. Now, don't drag me into the complex structure of serotonin receptor, serotonin subtype 1, 2, 3, and 3A, B, C. Forget it. Some receptors are agonists, some are antagonists. Antihistamines we discussed in POD block. Dimenhydrinate, mechanism, diphenhydramine. Are these names familiar? We discussed in POD. Block H1 receptors. They also have anticholinergic properties. Now, keep in mind, what is the common thing in these three names? They cross the blood-brain barrier, and they are basically, if you remember, let me refresh in your memory. There were two types of antihistamines. First generation, sedative, and second generation, non-sedative. Now, based on the target of the antihistamines, H1 receptors are present in the vestibular pathway, in the brain. So, which antihistamines would be effective in suppressing H1 receptors in the brain? The ones which cross BBB, that means only first generation. So, these are first generation. You can't use second generation antihistamines to suppress vomiting due to motion sickness. Only clinical use, motion sickness. You can't use for chemotherapy induced vomiting. Should I open that slide where H1 receptors are present? You can see on the slide. See, H1 receptors are present mainly in the so only motion sickness. And morning sickness also. What is morning sickness? It is the vomiting felt by pregnant women, especially during the first trimester. We do not know exactly the pathophysiological mechanism underlying morning sickness, but somehow antihistamine, especially the mechanism when it is combined with vitamin D, is very basic. It is available in the name of nevidoxin blood marker. It is very effective in suppressing the morning sickness. Since first generation antihistamines also have other effects, they are antimuscarinic, they are antimuscarinic, so they have the side effects related to antimuscarinic side effects. Okay, dryness of mouth, blurring of vision, urinary retention, and they cause sedation because we only use first generation antihistamines. What do you use? Oh, we covered this. Antimuscarinic, M receptors are present in which area? In the same, so antimuscarinics are also effective in suppressing motion sickness. Scopolamine, block muscular receptors in the cerebellum, highly effective in motion sickness. Why do we use scopolamine commonly, routinely for if somebody has a history of motion sickness while traveling on plane, repeated. So there over the counter, there are scopolamine patches, plasters, patches like stickers. You take out one and apply behind your ear. Behind your ear, and that is good for 2 days. As soon as you reach your destination, just remove it. Okay? That's it. 1 hour before the travel is good. Why do we use transdermal paste? This is the route of administration, is not oral. This is not topical. The effect, intended effect is brain, isn't it? But you are applying on the ear. So it is not topical. It is a transdermal paste. Do you remember? Transdermal route of administration. Why do we use scopolamine in this? Then you can use here, you can use on thigh. Now think, made a figure on your copy. Think about the pharmacokinetics. Over here, the drug will first go into the ear. The travel with the drug. You are a drug. You are scopolamine. First of all, where will you go as a transdermal page? To the capillaries from the skin. It has to be absorbed into the capillaries. From capillaries, you will go to venules. From venules to veins. And from veins to heart. And from heart to aorta. And then artery. And then you will go to the brain. So it doesn't mean if you are here nearby, the inner ear, that means is you will immediately cross the ear and go to the vestibular apparatus. You have to take a path which the body has created for you. There was a joke. I will tell you. A person comes to the bank, he gives a check for 1,000 riyals or whatever. Then how many days it will take to the money to be deposited in my account? It will take 2 days. Oh, but I am bringing the check from across the street. Another bank across the street. Why? It takes 2 days. He said, okay, if you by chance die outside the graveyard, okay, if you by chance die outside the graveyard, instead of going to the mosque and other things, will you be buried then and there in the graveyard? You have to be taken to the mosque. So there is a defined route. Path. That does not mean that here is there. Okay. Okay. Let's move. Scopolamine administered via a transdermal patch over the skin behind the ear. The patch is programmed to deliver in vivo an approximately constant rate to the systemic circulation over 3 days. Upon application, an initial priming dose of scopolamine is released from the adhesive layer to saturate skin binding sites. And then the subsequent delivery of scopolamine is designed to produce stable plasma levels in a therapeutic range. My question is still unanswered. Then why behind the ear? Simply because within the body, interestingly, it may be an interesting new phenomena, you will know that this area is very resistant to the changes in the temperature. Okay? There is an intense vasoconstriction or vasodilation depending upon the external temperature. And then accordingly, one important factor regarding the pharmacokinetics is the drug absorption of the will vary according to the blood circulation. If the blood circulation is less, the blood flow will be less, and the drug absorption will be less. And the reverse is true. So it's based on your external temperature. If there is a variation in the diameter of the blood vessel, your drug absorption will change. Here it has been seen it is very resistant to the changes in the there is a constant blood flow. So you actually receive a constant amount of scopolamine throughout 2 days or 3 days or whatever. Corticosteroids now, dexamethasone is used. It is adjuvant. Adjuvant means not the primary drug, but a supplementary drug given in addition to the primary drug. Adjuvant. Adjuvant to other antiemetics, for example, chemotherapy induced nausea and vomiting. Cannabinoids made from Cannabis indica or mexicana or Cannabis sativa, which is popularly known as marijuana. Nebilone, dronabinol, these are synthetic cannabinoids. Active substances, tetrahydrocannabinol, THC. Mechanism of action is unknown, but it probably relates to stimulation of CB1, subtype of cannabinoid receptors on neurons in and around the vomiting center. There are various adverse effects. Central sympathomimetic activity, euphoria. Is it a side effect?
Yeah, no one.
It's not good actually. Because of this, people are using marijuana. Because of this, people are using. For many, it may not be a side effect, it may be a good effect, additional good effect. Sedation, hallucination, dry mouth, and increased appetite. Now, see, once again, prevention of chemotherapy and ventilation, radiation-induced vomiting. Now you can ask dexamethasone and cannabinoids why they are only in the chemotherapy-induced vomiting. Because simply some component of the chemotherapy-induced vomiting, as I mentioned, some component of the chemotherapy-induced vomiting does not come from the stimulation of CGD. Some comes from the higher center, based on the recall and the experience, Pavlov's experiment condition. So you are going to block that component. So they are not the primary drugs, they are adjuvant to primary drugs like serotonin receptor antagonist to block that component of the CIND which comes from the higher center. Is that clear? Benzodiazepines, diazepam, lorazepam, alprazolam, used prior to the initiation of chemotherapy to reduce anticipatory vomiting and or vomiting caused by anxiety. Once again, that component which comes from the anxiety or anticipation. And finally, MK1 substance P receptor antagonist, which is present in the vomiting center. Non-peptide selective neurokinin type 1 receptor antagonist. What happened? Aprepitant, rolapitant, two drugs, block substance P from binding to NK1 receptor, broader spectrum of activity, and it has been used mainly in the chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting. It's the most recent class of drugs. Only a few years ago, they were approved for using in chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting. Adverse effects are what is asthenia? Asthenia, weakness of muscle, skeletal muscle. Hiccups, diarrhea, heartburn, dizziness, and these are few side effects. Now, in the final end, I have prepared a summary for you. For motion sickness, the drug of choice scopolamine. Other drugs can be used like antihistamines, first generation antihistamines, like diphenhydramine, cyclizine, meglizine. Morning sickness, drug of choice, meglizine coupled with peridoxine. Chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting, D2 receptor antagonist, like metoclopramide, 5-hydroxytryptamine receptor antagonist, like ondansetron, NK1 receptor antagonists, like aprepitant, and these are the primary drugs. Adjuvant, dexamethasone, cannabinoids as adjuvant drugs. Clear? Why adjuvant? Why adjuvant? To block conditioning. To block conditioning from the higher center. Anticipatory nausea and vomiting, because that major component of anticipatory nausea and vomiting is not coming from the city there, but it is the anxiety. So you would go for the benzodiazepines. Benzodiazepines are anxiolytic drugs. Are you remembering benzodiazepines? You remember? Okay, if you remember, tell me the mechanism of action. GABA, yes, GABA what? They bind with the benzodiazepine receptor, which is coupled with GABA receptor. Okay, and with the binding of benzodiazepine, its own specific receptor, there is increased opening of GABA receptor. For chloride channel, increased opening of chloride channels leading to hyperpolarization in depression. Isn't it? What is the difference between benzodiazepine and these barbiturates? Increased frequency caused by benzodiazepine and increased duration of opening of chloride channels by barbiturates. So in addition to that, there is one more important thing. Barbiturates themselves are GABA mimetic. They can bind to GABA receptor. That is why they are more powerful. They can stop change. Benzodiazepines do not stop change. Okay. Post-operative vomiting, D2 receptor antagonist, serotonin receptor antagonist, gastroenteritis, once again, serotonin and dopamine receptor antagonist. So from this table, you can figure out, just revise the whole pathophysiology. Wherever the receptors are present, you figure out the type of vomiting and employ the appropriate receptor antagonist according to the type of vomiting. Read it. So which drug did he take? Metoclopramide, extrapyramidal symptoms. Good. Thank you.